Here is the picture that Glenn Ford, co-publisher of the Black Commentator magazine, had available of me to make his racial slurs about. Do I look like a skinhead white supremacist from Georgia? And what is Cynthia McKinney doing having her supporters call me racial slurs that are as offensive as the racial slurs that Don Imus got fired for making about black basketball players and organizing against a U.S. military mission during a time of war? Cynthia McKinney has refused to answer, like a typical 9/11 truther. In the fall of 2003, I saw where Phil Berg was filing a lawsuit against the Bush administration and contacted him with my 1976 U.S. military study information. He referred me to a Mr. Jeff Truman from VERPA, Veterans Equal Rights Protection Advocacy, Inc., at www.verpa.us, who have been trying for over a decade to have the Ferris Doctrine repealed. The Ferris Doctrine is a 1950 U.S. Supreme Court decision that exempts the U.S. government and its agents from any civil or criminal legal responsibility for any injuries, damages, or death caused by any act or action taken against or upon any U.S. military personnel. This is the Supreme Court decision that the CIA used to carry out its LSD torture-medical experiments on U.S. military personnel for decades that they admitted to in the 1990s. He was volunteering to help with the Ellen Mariani RICO lawsuit, and Mr. Truman helped me write up my affidavit for the lawsuit. He told me that at first Phil Berg did not want to use my U.S. Defense Department information because it showed the Democratic political party was legally responsible for the September 11, 2001 attacks happening, but caved in and used it after Mr. Truman and the other volunteers threatened to walk out on Phil Berg, since he had told them that he would follow the information from the case to wherever it led. I only had a couple of weeks to get it submitted for filing, so it did not contain all of the information about the study I have and would be providing the rest on the witness stand. I have repeatedly pointed out to every 9/11 truther on earth, to include Kevin Barrett, that U.S. Attorney General John Ashcroft, the person Kevin Barrett and the 9/11 Truth Movement called a totalitarian prosecutor for rounding up innocent people to be held in secret prisons around the world, never arrested me for impersonating a federal agent or even questioned me about my identifying myself as the U.S. federal agent I am in the first paragraph of my affidavit. I have asked every 9/11 truther, to include Kevin Barrett, to explain why the totalitarian prosecutor from their post-9/11 political police state U.S. government did not arrest me for impersonating a U.S. federal agent when I testified for U.S. federal court that I am a U.S. federal agent. Not one 9/11 truther, to include Kevin Barrett, will answer my question, yet every one of them claims my U.S. federal court testimony is not true. If my U.S. federal court testimony had not been true, I would have been arrested for the U.S. federal felony of impersonating a federal agent, which was a U.S. federal felony even before the Patriot Act, which the 9/11 Truth Movement claims is the beginning of their post-9/11 political police state U.S. government. I have also asked the 9/11 Truth Movement to explain why the U.S. government, if it is the political police state that they claim it is, doesn't even know who its political police state government agents are if their claim that I am not the U.S. federal agent I testified for U.S. federal court I am is true. Not one 9/11 truther will reply to this question. There are more unanswered questions about the 9/11 truth movement and their mega $1 million for profit cottage industry than there is about the Bush administration. I will now give a brief description of what I did in the study. One day, while I was a member of C Battery's 2nd of the 81st Field Artillery, U.S. Army, stationed on Strasbourg Kaserne in Idar-Oberstein, West Germany, I was called to our unit's office where Lieutenant Michael Teague told me I was going to be taking part in a U.S. military study to improve U.S. air travel security. He explained why it was being conducted: the heightened tensions following the last Israeli-Egyptian war, the attack on the Munich Olympic Games, Mr. Bike's attempt to hijack an airliner to crash into the White House to get Nixon, and a recent bombing in Frankfurt that targeted U.S. soldiers. He went on to explain what the scenario of the study would be, and that is, an airliner was going to be hijacked, then crashed into a 100-story building in America, and we were to think of how we would carry out this mission so we could develop countermeasures to prevent any attack like this from happening. Prevention was the stressed purpose of the study. The study lasted for about 2 months, with me being called on once or twice a week as needed. The segment of the study I took part in consisted of Q&A sessions where Lieutenant Teague prompted us with questions to get answers to the topics the DoD personnel who were running the study wanted to be discussed on that day. If the DoD personnel liked your answer, they would have a private session with you to get more information about your answer. There were also what I called side conversations because the topics were not about the main scenario of the study to hijack an airliner. Some of the questions were: what kind of plane would be best to hijack? What kind of weapons would be used and how would you get them on the plane? How would you control the passengers? Who would it be that would attack us? Lieutenant Teague did not let us answer this question. He answered it himself and said, Middle Eastern Arabs, and then went right into this question. What should we say to the Nation of Islam about the U.S. government's military retaliation? The U.S. government already had an invasion plan for the Middle East in place for years, for an attack that wouldn't happen for another quarter of a century. Another question: what about using explosives? When Lieutenant Teague asked this question, we looked at him like we did not understand. Then he expanded the question to, what about using explosives to bring the building down? Why has the 9/11 Truth Movement censored this U.S. government discussion about using explosives to bring the building down if their claim is that the U.S. government used explosives to bring the World Trade Center Twin Towers down? None of the 9/11 truthers will reply to this question. What political climate would the country be in when the attacks happened? And who would hamstring America? On the second or third day I took part in the study, Lieutenant Teague told us that there had been a change sent down from the DoD. Donald Rumsfeld was Secretary of Defense at the time. That the generic 100-story building was being changed to the World Trade Center Twin Towers. He explained that it came down as an order without any explanation, just that the World Trade Center Twin Towers would be the building of concern, what the DoD called it, for the rest of the study. A couple of days later in the hall, Sergeant Terry Henderson told us that Lieutenant Teague had said that he could do this because it was his duty, but it was weird to be asked to plan to blow up your own hometown.